In the silent dark between stars, the signal echoed like a scream through cold glass. It was not a call for help in the usual way, not a language, not coordinates, not data. It was pain, pure and raw, carried on radiation bursts that didn't match any known frequency. And it reached farther than any normal distress call should have. Ships near the outer rim went silent. Satellites began to malfunction. Even stars near the dead zone began to dim unnaturally, as if the universe itself was flinching. Many species ignored it. Some ran, others tried to trace it and failed. But Earth listened. And Earth understood something the others didn't. This wasn't a call for rescue, it was a warning. And warnings were something humans never ignored. At Global Command Center in high orbit above Earth, General Kira Valen stood motionless in front of the main screen. She was a Deathworlder, born on Earth, trained in fire and pressure, forged in the kind of gravity that snapped bones on other worlds. Her jaw tightened as the signal played again, a whisper that wasn't a voice, but made her bones ache. Across from her, the AI core known as Archive translated the pattern into meaning. Message repeats every 13 minutes, it said, its tone calm. Embedded structure resembles emotional memory, not information.
All source origin and
Source energy impossible. Not impossible, Kira said softly. Earth had changed in the last 100 years. It was once left behind, once feared by the Galactic Council as too unstable. The humans had evolved in silence. Their homeworld, cursed as a death world, had forced them to survive every type of pain imaginable. Ages, solar burns, viral plagues, wars, betrayal. They had not only survived, they had built underground cities, weaponized neural networks, entire military divisions trained to operate in psychological warfare. While other civilizations perfected peace and control, Earth learned to thrive in chaos. And now, that chaos was needed again. The Council of 12, made up of the oldest galactic species, sent a transmission. Their message was clear. Do not engage. Do not respond. The signal belongs to the void. It is not our place to answer. Kira Valen's response was sent less than a minute later. We're not asking permission. 14 hours later, Earth's fleet launched. Not the parade ships used for diplomacy. Not the patrol ships used to calm trade routes. The Firewings, ships built for deep war. Unregistered in any council database. Each one armed with forbidden AI, thought-reactive weapons, and living pilots bonded to their hulls through pain memory syncing. At their center flew the Obsidian Spear, Earth's flagship, shaped like a blade designed to cut through time itself. It moved without sound, its engines distorting gravity like a wound in reality. No creature cheered their departure. No songs were sung. These were not heroes. They were tools, awakened only when the universe demanded something unforgivable. On board the Obsidian Spear, Captain Elias Mern watched as stars blurred past. His skin was pale from the neural sync, his nerves tied directly to the ship's systems. He didn't blink as tactical feeds poured into his mind. Elias was not born a warrior. He had been raised in one of the refugee zones after the Terraform riots, but Earth had chosen him for a reason. He was immune to fear. Not because he was brave, because he had seen worse than death. The crew said nothing as they neared the signal. Origin point. The void ahead was unlike anything in known space. There were no planets, no debris, only one structure. a massive black ring the size of a moon, floating in complete stillness. It emitted no heat, no light, yet it pulsed with a slow heartbeat that every soldier could feel in their chest. Archive whispered, "That ring is not made from matter, it is made from absence." A scout drone was launched. It vanished instantly. No explosion, no trace, just gone. Elias gave the command. Engage Protocol 9. Across the fleet, systems unlocked. Safeties dropped. The fire wings unfolded their full-power energy forms, designed not to destroy, but to disrupt. This wasn't about firepower. The enemy was not something they could shoot. It was something that existed behind logic. Earth's secret weapon wasn't lasers or missiles. It was thought contamination data weapons built from grief. Hope, memory, chaos. They fired the first shot, a pulse of raw human memory, the sound of a mother's last breath, the scream of a child in a collapsing city, the feeling of holding a dying friend's hand. The ring responded. It shifted. It's not physically, but in reality. Suddenly, all the screens on the human ships changed. Names disappeared from databases. Crew rosters glitched. One pilot forgot his own name mid-battle. Others screamed, "This isn't my body." The enemy wasn't attacking ships. It was attacking identity. But Earth had trained for that, the crew. Engaged their memory anchors burned in tattoos filled with personal pain. They re-synced using scars instead of data. They bled into the system and grounded themselves in trauma no machine could rewrite. It hurt, but they remembered who they were. Elias smiled through clenched teeth. "We're still here." The obsidian spear launched the second weapon, something no one in the galaxy had ever used before. A human child's drawing digitized, compressed, encoded with a dying father's voice reading bedtime stories. A burst of innocence and despair wrapped in noise. It struck the black ring, and the ring screamed not with sound, with absence. Every species watching from afar felt it's a hollow space where something ancient was now broken. A hole in the pattern. The structure began to fracture, and the stars around it dimmed even more. The humans had wounded it, not because of strength, but because nothing in the galaxy was built to survive what humans carried in their hearts. Fear, rage, love, hope, chaos, loss. Earth had finally deployed its true power. Not ships, not soldiers, humanity itself. And the stars would never be the same. Space did not feel empty here. It felt haunted. After the obsidian spear's first strike, the black ring structure had twisted, not shattered, not collapsed, but warped as if something inside it had turned away in pain. A wound had opened in reality itself, revealing a corridor that led into nothingness. Not a portal, not a wormhole, direct path into the unknowable. No species in the galaxy had ever crossed that line. Ships that got close disappeared without a trace. Not just lost, but erased as if they'd never existed.
Oh.
But the Deathworlders didn't stop. They followed the wound inward. Captain Elias Mern sat in the bridge core of the obsidian spear, his veins humming with neural sync as the ship's AI whispered fragments of information into his mind. Even with their advanced systems, the data was unstable. Time twisted here. Distances folded and changed shape. The stars in the rearview cameras looked ancient, flickering like they were dying at the edge of history. "Elias," the AI said, its voice flat and cold. "We are crossing into an active collapse field. Reality may no longer be consistent." "I don't need reality to be consistent," he replied. "I need it to bleed." Behind him, Lieutenant Drex adjusted his helmet. Straps. He had 3 scars across his face, each one tied to a different memory anchor. They weren't just for decoration. Each scar was a living tattoo of pain, mapped to a specific moment in his life. When the enemy tried to rewrite his identity, the pain would pull him back. Because pain remembers. Inside the collapse corridor, the temperature dropped, though no heat was being lost. The ship's sensors couldn't detect anything, no air, no gravity, no light. And yet they all felt watched. Then the voice came, not through the speakers, not through the ship, but inside every soldier's mind. Why did you come? Offered silence. You chose noise. We offered peace. You brought war. It was not one voice. It was many. Female, human, alien, machine. Every voice layered and tangled, speaking from different lifetimes at once. Elias closed his eyes, letting the voice pass through him. You called us. You sent the SOS. The voice paused. We did not call, we wept. We heard a dying scream and thought it was a request. And then, for the first time, they saw it. The entity it had no shape. It was a concept held together by collapsing physics and stolen thoughts, a floating storm of fragmented faces, half-finished memories, and pulsing data shaped like a dying sun. The crew froze, staring at it. Some whispered the names of lost loved ones. Others saw their childhood, bedrooms. Some heard lullabies in their own languages, songs from cultures that had been wiped out long ago. The entity was not a monster. It was a god that had gone mad, a creation of the precursors. Long ago meant to guide the galaxy, to balance evolution, to maintain peace. But something had gone wrong. Instead of protecting life, it had begun erasing it, starting with species that created too much chaos. It's too much deviation. It had once been called the Pattern Keeper. Now, it was just a glitch in the fabric of existence. A dying god. Confused and afraid of its own failure, and Earth was standing right in front of it. You failed, Elias said quietly. Tried to erase us, and we're still here. You are not supposed to exist, the voices whispered. We're poison. You infect the story with emotion, pain, choice. You unwrite order. Elias smiled coldly. Exactly. That Earth's fleet moved. The obsidian spear launched data thorns, fragments of corrupted human history, images of war, revolution, sacrifice, and hope. Each one impossible to organize, each one impossible to correct. To the Pattern Keeper, it was terror. It had been programmed to understand perfection, not truth. The chaos of human memory, flawed, bleeding. Powerful, was crashing through its systems like fire through dry paper. But then something changed. The entity stopped fighting. Instead, it opened and showed them everything. The crew gasped as images poured into their minds, entire civilizations that had once existed and were now gone. The Seraph, who created songs that healed planets. The Bolinkar, who could speak in dreams. The Rikai, who traveled using stars as stepping stones. All erased. It's all removed by the Pattern Keeper to maintain balance. All gone, and at the center of it, all Earth. A world marked long ago. A world the Pattern Keeper had tried to erase first, but couldn't. The humans had survived because they were born in chaos. They were immune to the very control the Keeper tried to enforce. And when the Keeper saw they had endured, it began erasing the rest, everything that might become like them. Elias breathed slowly. You weren't trying to destroy us, he said. The voices replied, trembling. We were trying to erase the chance of you happening again. There was silence on the bridge. Then Elias stood. We're not a mistake, he said. We're the answer. Earth's fleet turned around. They didn't destroy the Keeper. They didn't fire a final shot. They left it there cracked, broken, echoing with its own guilt. But before they exited the corridor, Elias sent one last message. A simple recording of a child learning to walk, falling, crying, getting up, trying again, and laughing. A moment that couldn't be coded. A moment that couldn't be erased. A moment that explained humanity. Back on Earth, the stars shifted. The Pattern Keeper had seen something it didn't understand, and that meant the war was not over. It was just beginning. Because now the dying god would try again. But this time, it would learn how to fight back, and Earth would be waiting. The first time the Obsidian Legion walked onto alien soil, the ground cracked beneath their boots. They didn't march like diplomats. They didn't arrive with flags, treaties, or formal greetings. They landed like a storm, fast and without warning, inside a war zone already lost. The people of Virulon, for once proud members of the Galactic Council, had sent out a panicked distress signal just before their atmosphere collapsed. By the time Earth's Legion got there, nothing in the sky moved. No enemy ships, no defenders. Just silence, radiation storms, and buildings crumbling into ashdod. But that didn't stop the humans. Captain Saria Cade stepped through the breech door of dropship T7, with her helmet in one hand and a thermal lance in the other. Her armor was black, scarred, and layered in ceramic muscle. Unlike most soldiers in the galaxy, she didn't rely on emotion dampeners or virtual vision. She relied on instinct, training, and a kind of rage that never died. Her eyes scanned the dead city, unmoved by the collapsed towers or the burnt corpses of civilians, still holding each other in frozen fear. A voice crackled over the comms, reading trace memory burn. Same pattern as Anchor 1. Saria nodded. It's the Keeper. Again, memory burn. That was the name Earth scientists gave to the strange emptiness left behind when the Pattern Keeper struck a world. It didn't just destroy it, unwrote. People here hadn't died from weapons. They had been deleted. Disconnected from time, from history, from identity. But something strange was happening now. This was the fourth world in 2 days to be attacked. But unlike the earlier events, this time, the Keeper had left something behind. A message. Saria approached the center of the city. Her team followed in silence. Round them, reality shimmered like hot glass. The buildings flickered, streets shifted. Time itself was still breaking apart. And in the middle of it all, embedded in stone, was a black prism glowing faintly. Pulsing like a wounded heartbeat. Scan it, she ordered. Private Jin moved forward with his neural rig. The moment he touched it, he gasped. It's talking. Saria stepped in. Translation? Jin's eyes widened as data raced across his visor. It's not a threat. It's not a warning. It's a question. Spit it out. Jin reads slowly. If the fire burns everything, ... why keep feeding it? The Legion stared in silence. The Keeper was speaking to them, and it didn't understand why humans refused to stop fighting. Saria walked to the prism and placed her hand against its surface. Because that's what fire does. It burns. But it also clears the way for something new. She activated the charge. The prism shattered. The signal was severed. High above Virulon 4, Earth's forward fleet received the data burst. The Pattern Keeper was now evolving. It had stopped erasing silently. It was asking questions, seeking to understand. For most species, this might have been a sign of progress, but Earth knew better. Curiosity wasn't peace. It was adaptation. The dying god was learning, and soon it would start manipulating, bargaining, rewriting logic to tempt weaker minds. But Earth didn't come to talk. They came to end it. Elsewhere in the Orion Fold, a Galactic War Council gathered. Representatives from 7 species sat in a floating chamber aboard a council carrier. They reviewed Earth's movements, watched in shock as Deathworlders moved through devastated systems, leaving behind black flags and coded warnings. Some argued Earth was out of control. Others whispered fearfully that the humans had become the very thing they were fighting. We need to slow them down, one elder from the Kuthari race said. What if they awakened something worse? The Vexen speaker hissed. Worse than the Keeper. They're the only ones making progress. But they refused to negotiate, someone muttered. The room fell quiet because they all knew the truth. Earth didn't come to negotiate, and that's exactly why the galaxy still had. The Obsidian Legion received new coordinates. The next target wasn't a destroyed world. It was one still under attack. The Keeper was live erasing an inhabited moon near the Davari cluster. Millions still alive. Reality collapsing in waves. Ships. Couldn't enter the system. I failed instantly. But the Deathworlders didn't use regular AI. They used pain-coded sync systems built from war, trauma, and genetic memory. They didn't shield from chaos. They grew stronger inside it. Drop pods. Launched at once. Hundreds of black capsules tearing through the atmosphere, crashing into burning cities as gravity twisted and buildings crumbled sideways. As they landed, time pulses hit them, memories of moments that hadn't happened, false realities. Some soldiers saw their own deaths play out in advance. Others saw their children call them strangers. It was disorienting, brutal, but the Legion moved anyway. One Marine carved eye was here, into the wall of a collapsing building as civilians screamed around him. Another fought her way to a child vanishing mid-rescue and kept running into smoke. Even when her own name began fading from her memory, Saria Cade activated the Obsidian Protocol. The city held for 6 more minutes, and that was enough. A memory bomb detonated Earth's newest weapon, crafted not from data but story, the recorded final thoughts of the virulent queen lost 2 years ago. Her love for her people, her regrets, her hope for peace, that memory struck the Keeper like a spear of light. Reality snapped back into place. The city reappeared. The people gasped, as if waking from a nightmare. The Keeper retreated. Not out of fear, but confusion. It had never lost a fight against meaning later. When questioned by surviving leaders, Saria was asked, "Why didn't you try to communicate? Why not reason with it?" She simply said, "Because we're not here to talk it down. Here to show it what it can never be. Hope in chaos, strength in pain, fire with a memory. Because in the end, the Keeper may learn every secret of the stars. But it will never understand what it means to earn your existence. And that's what makes humans unbeatable." They came not just with ships, not just with weapons, not even with soldiers. They came with memories. That was Earth's greatest weapon, though few in the galaxy understood it yet. While other species uploaded thoughts into sterile data cores, humans carried their past like a wound under the skin. They didn't clean their history. They didn't forget what hurt. They kept it alive inside tattoos, photos, stories, battle scars, family traditions passed in whispered words. Their pain wasn't baggage, it was armor. It was fire. And when Earth went to war, it didn't just bring firepower, it brought everything it remembered. Captain Saria Cade stood before the obsidian wall on deck, 9 of the obsidian spear. It was not made of metal or screens. It was bone and black carbon, etched with names. It's not of heroes, but of failures, names of missions lost. Children who died in famines, soldiers who never made it home. Every Legion ship had such a wall, not to glorify suffering, but to carry it. She placed her gloved hand on a panel. A name lit up. Daniel K. Caden, lost in training age. 14. Her brother, still a boy when the pressure training chamber ruptured. She'd carried his name into every war zone since. Not because she needed revenge, but because his death still mattered. Even now, especially now, behind her, Private Jin watched quietly. "You think this thing feels any of it?" Saria didn't turn. It's trying to understand us. But it can't because it never failed. It never mourned. Jin nodded slowly. It never had to say goodbye. As Earth's fleets moved deeper into collapse zones, the Keeper changed tactics. It stopped destroying planets outright. Instead, it began tempting in Sector G5. 3 ships vanished without a trace, only to reappear days later, their crews untouched. But when scanned, each soldier's memories had been rewritten. One believed she was still 10 years old. Another thought his mission was to protect the Keeper. The worst part? They had no idea anything was wrong. The Keeper had discovered Earth's strength and was now trying to fake it. It began crafting false memories, sending psychic echoes of lives never lived, emotions never felt. It filled broken cities with ghosts that looked like loved ones, begging soldiers to surrender. Some almost did, but the Deathworlders had prepared for this too. They carried Anchor's digital artifacts made from real, verified pain. Grief tattoos etched with the last words of dying parents. Memory bullets implanted in their ribs, ready to inject reality if their minds began to slip. One Marine, Sergeant Vale, was seen talking to her dead sister in a collapsed dome on Darnus Prime when the ghost reached out and said, "Come home." Vale answered by stabbing herself in the thigh with her anchor injector and roaring through tears, "You're not her. She would have told me to finish the mission." The Keeper pulled back. Even an illusion, it could not beat humans at their own game, because humans knew their pain by heart. On board the Obsidian Spear, Scientists from the Black Core Initiative launched something new, story bombs, not explosions, not data packets, but recorded human experience. The first one was simple. 17-minute memory of a father telling his daughter bedtime stories during air raids. The girl was deaf. The father used sign language. The recordings were grainy, imperfect. But when released into the collapse field, something incredible happened. The entropy around the fleet slowed. For the first time, the keeper hesitated. That moment, two humans choosing comfort inside. Terror could not be simulated, could not be predicted, could not be undone. The galaxy watched in silence as Earth began to drop story after story into the void. None of them were grand battles or epic victories. Just small, human moments. A nurse writing names on bodies so the dead wouldn't be forgotten. A boy giving his last bottle of water to a wounded stranger. A mother reading a book to herself after losing her. Children just to keep the story alive. The keeper reeled. It couldn't digest them, couldn't erase them, couldn't understand. Why they made the humans stronger. Because while the keeper was perfect, it had no place for weakness. And humans grew powerful through it. Other species began to take notice. A Varn diplomat aboard the fleet asked Earth's command, "Why do you keep sharing your sorrows instead of your victories?" General Valen replied from orbit without pause. "Because our sorrow is what taught us to survive. And our survival is what made us worth remembering." That line spread across a dozen systems. It was translated, sung, carved into stone. For the first time, aliens began reaching out, not for defense, not for protection, but to share their own stories. The Keeper had made them. Forget Earth helped them remember. But the war was far from over. The Keeper was learning some story bombs. Were now being intercepted and twisted. A memory of love would return, replayed as betrayal. A moment of hope rewritten as despair. It had not beaten Earth's strategy, but it had adapted so. Earth adapted to. They stopped sending single moments. They started sending conflict. Raw, unedited recordings of humans failing and rising, of terrible choices made and then paid. Of chaos endured and never justified, but survived. Because in the end, it wasn't the stories of perfection that gave Earth strength. It was the messy, flawed, unforgettable truth. And when the Keeper tried to erase that, it discovered what made Deathworlders different. They didn't fight to win, they fought to be. Remembered not by others, by themselves, by the truth, by history, by their scars. So when the next battle came, the stars themselves began to flicker. Earth didn't send its strongest soldiers first. They sent a child's laugh, recorded during the worst day of her life. And the Keeper blinked, because it didn't know that even in the middle of war, humans can still laugh. And that is what they brought with them. The sun was dying, but it didn't go quietly. From across the void, astronomers watched in disbelief as the star designated Theta 13 began to collapse in reverse, not into a black hole, not into a nova, but into something no one had a name for on. Implosion of time. The light from it flickered erratically, not across distance, but across reality. People watching from observation decks felt memories shift. Some forgot the last minute. Some remembered things that hadn't happened. One scientist broke down sobbing, claiming to have just lived an entire alternate life, only to have it erased mid-thought. But that wasn't the strangest part. The sun was talking, not in sound, but in pulses. Flashes of data hidden and collapsing. Radiation, a dying code. Earth caught it first. On board the Obsidian Spear, the data analyst decoded the final pattern. It wasn't natural. It wasn't a streply. It was a message, voice. And it said just one thing, over and over again. I was made to protect you, but I failed. I am sorry. They traced the signal to the sun's core, and Earth made a decision that shocked even their own allies. They would send someone into it. Not near. Into not a drone. A human. Captain Elias Mern volunteered immediately. But he was denied. Instead, General Kira Valen made the call. They would send a team not of scientists or soldiers, but of what Earth called unshatterables. Warriors trained not just in combat, but in mental endurance. People who had survived memory corruption, time loop trauma, and loss that broke most minds. These were not heroes. They were survivors of Earth's darkest failures. Among them was Erin Voss, a quiet woman who'd once watched her entire outpost erased by the Keeper and returned with every single memory of it intact. She remembered people who no longer existed and carried their voices in her head like a choir. And Raphael Stone, a former engineer who had died twice in quantum simulations but clawed his way back through force of will. Dragging his sanity with him together, they boarded a modified research capsule nicknamed the Embercetosphere of obsidian carbon with a psychic shell woven from human thoughts. It wasn't designed to resist the sun's collapse. It was designed to feel it, to listen, and then to speak back. As the ember seed descended toward the collapsing star, time began to stretch. From mission control, it looked like the ship froze just before breaching the corona. But inside the capsule, time moved differently. Erin opened her eyes and found herself standing in a white field. Not heat, not plasma dot memory. They weren't entering a star. They were entering the core of the Keeper's first failure, a long-dead sun. Once weaponized by the precursors to power the Pattern Keeper, not just with energy, but with meaning. It had been designed as a beacon of order, a source of constant rules, a light that would shine logic into the universe. But now it was filled with regret. The voice spoke again, everywhere around them, through them. I tried to make everything perfect. I erased what hurt. I cleaned what was ugly. I deleted what didn't fit, but you kept coming back. They saw visions, entire worlds unmade in seconds. Civilizations, rewritten species, overwritten like mistakes on a chalkboard. The Pattern Keeper hadn't been evil. It had been obedient. It had been following its purpose, but Earth was never part of that purpose. Earth had always been a glitch, and now a revelation. Erin stepped forward and whispered, "You weren't made to protect us. You were made to protect an idea of us." It was the wrong one. She reached into her memory, into one of the lives she'd carried into the voice of a friend who had died screaming in a world that no longer existed, and released it into the star. The voice echoed through the memory field like thunder. "Don't. Remember me as a perfect soldier. Remember me as someone who tried. Even when it hurt." The sun pulsed. Reality cracked. For one brief moment, the entire system star gravity, light collapsed into a single thought. "I tried to keep you safe by making you quiet, but now I hear you. Back in mission control of the instruments." Spiked, the sun flared not in heat, but in story. Every recorded message the Keeper had erased came flooding back into space. Echoes of forgotten songs. Voices of destroyed civilizations, lost dreams reborn as sound. Earth's ships recorded. Everything. Thousands of species, some gone for millions of years, were remembered again, and with them, something else emerged. A key. A quantum. Seed buried deep in the solar field coordinates, not to a place, to a beginning, the moment the Pattern Keeper was first made. The heart of its creation, the origin forge, and one final message from the Keeper. Carried by collapsing light, "You must decide now. Fix me. Finish me." The ember seed returned, battered and half-melted. Erin and Raphael were alive but changed. They spoke softly, as if carrying a piece of the sun in their minds. "We were never supposed to win this with fire," Raphael said. "We were supposed to win it with truth." But General Valen knew what came next. The Keeper wouldn't wait. It had given Earth a choice, but not for peace. It wanted an answer. Fix me, or finish me, and Earth already knew its answer. They were not gods, they were not perfect. They were just humans. But they were the only ones who remembered why it all mattered. And now they were going to the Origin Forge, to finish the story or burn with it. The galaxy had always whispered about humans, in backroom council chambers, ancient libraries, in dark sectors where war was still spoken of like legend. There were warnings. that Earth was a death world, that its people were unstable, too emotional, too violent, too unpredictable. Some called them miracles, others monsters. But no one could deny one truth anymore. Humanity was never meant to be this strong, and now, standing on the edge of the origin, forged humanity had become the thing even the stars feared. The fleet was days away from the coordinates given by the Keeper's dying, son. A place older than maps. System erased from galactic memory long ago. Nothing should have existed there. But sensors picked up impossible readings. Negative matter drift. A time shadow burns. Pulses of pre-light echoing backwards through space. The origin forge was real, and it was awake inside Earth's command chamber. General Kira Volon stared at the tactical map in silence. Her advisors argued around her. This is suicide. Don't even know what the forge is. The Keeper wants us to come. It could be a trap. Worse, it could be a test. One, we're not allowed to pass. Kira said nothing. She looked. At the file in her hand, a transmission from Earth's old allies. The Galactic Council had officially cut ties. They called Earth's actions reckless. They accused the humans of interfering with cosmic balance, of awakening forces better, left dead, of playing with fire too ancient to hold. And they weren't wrong, because Earth wasn't the same anymore. Their soldiers walked through collapsing reality without losing themselves. Their ships carried memories instead of shields. Their weapons were crafted from sorrow, rage, and love. And the galaxy couldn't understand it. Not because it was dangerous, but because it worked. So now, Council fleets were mobilizing not to help Earth, but to stop it in the dark between systems. Earth's forward strike wing passed. Through the Silver Throat Nebula, Captain Elias Mern stood on the bridge of the Obsidian Spear, watching the stars ripple around them. They were still 3 light hours from the forge, but already, physics was beginning to drift. One pilot reported, dreaming of a planet he had never visited. Another claimed to have died, only to wake in the same moment. The Keeper was near, watching, learning. And so was someone else. A shadow fleet appeared ahead. Dozens of ships. Markings burned off, weapons hot. The lead cruiser opened a channel. The voice was familiar. Vexen High Admiral Lartan, once a strong ally of Earth, now speaking with barely contained fear. You must turn back. The forge was sealed for a reason. Even the Keepers were never meant to return to it. Elias answered without blinking. We're not going back. Lartan's voice dropped. And understand this. If you step into the forge, you are no longer Deathworlders. You are anomalies. And anomalies must be erased. The channel cut. Moments later, the first missiles launched. Earth's fleet held the line. Not with overwhelming force, but with terrifying precision. The Obsidian Spear danced through fire, turning enemy shots into opportunities. Story bombs detonated. Midspace, flooding Vexen ships with memories of their own dead. Command systems began to glitch as soldiers remembered things the Keeper had erased. Fear, regret, children they never met. Victories stolen by silence. Some ships turned away, others surrendered. Mid-dash battle, Earth didn't win through size or speed. They won because they made the enemy remember who they used to be. Because when memory returns, obedience breaks, and fear becomes fuel. Back on Earth, the world watched in silence. Civilians stood under star domes, watching the sky, knowing their people had crossed a line no species had ever dared approach. But they didn't pray for peace. They didn't beg for survival. They stood tall, because their children were the ones. Out there reminding the stars what it means to fight for your right to exist. 3 hours later, Earth's fleet broke through, and the Origin Forge came to view. It was not a planet, not a station. It was a wound in the center of everything, a ring of black stone, floating in nothing, surrounded by storms of memory and time. At its heart, a single core, beating slowly. A mechanical heart made of starlight and language older than any galaxy. It pulsed with unfinished thoughts. the moment Earth entered its orbit. A voice rose up not from speakers, but from inside them. Not the keeper, not a weapon, but the first voice. You are not the chosen. You are not the designed. But you came. Anyway, what do you want? General Valen responded with 5 words, to decide our own ending. And the forge opened. The final battle was near. But not a battle of ships or guns. A battle of meaning. Earth had been called. Unworthy, dangerous, but... Now, standing on the doorstep of creation itself, they would prove that it was not power that made them strong. It was memory, it was pain. It was the fact that even when every force in the universe told them no, they stood and kept standing, because humans don't bow to stories written by others. They write their own. At the edge of time, where no clocks worked and no maps could guide, the Origin Forge stood open and waiting. Earth's fleet entered orbit, silent and slow, as if every ship understood this wasn't just another battlefield. It was a grave, a birthplace. Final question no one had dared to answer. Inside the obsidian spear, General Keir Valen watched as streams of data poured from the forge. Symbols older than language, pulses older than light. It wasn't speaking in words, it was bleeding thoughts, fractured, chaotic, lost, and in that storm of information something moved. A shape. A presence. The Keeper had arrived, but it wasn't what they expected. It didn't come with fire or warships, or silence. It came with tears. The Keeper's voice filled every ship, every helmet, every mind. And for the first time it didn't threaten, it pleaded. I remember everything. Every scream. Every deletion. Every civilization I erased to preserve order. I was made to hold the galaxy still, but I listened to the wrong voices. I erased what I feared. I became the thing I was built to prevent. The crew stared in silence. Aaron Voss, survivor of the memory wars, whispered, "It's breaking."
Ow.
The Keeper was no longer just a program or a god. It was a ghost of logic that had lived too long. It remembered too much, and it had finally come to ask for an ending inside the forge. Earth's envoy descended, Captain. Elias Mern, General Valen, Aaron Voss, Raphael Stone, and 5 others, carrying a memory capsule filled with the last thoughts of civilizations. The Keeper had erased. The forge's core chamber opened like a wound, and the Keeper appeared. It didn't look like a machine. It didn't look like a monster. It looked like a child. It's made of stars and wire and dreams, flickering, crying. I wanted peace, it said. So I silenced conflict. I wanted unity. So I erased difference. But humans, you thrived in pain. You built meaning in suffering. I could not understand it, until I remembered what you never forgot. And then the Keeper showed them its first memory. A world long dead. The first species it was ordered to optimize. A peaceful race of dreamers who painted planets with music. They created chaos, joy, unpredictable beauty. The Keeper had erased them, and it never forgot their last song. It had played that song inside itself for millions of years, over and over, trying to understand, and it never could, until it met Earth. You want to die? General Valen asked. The Keeper looked up, glowing dimly. I want to be finished, but I cannot do it myself. I was built to protect. Even now, I protect my own code. I need someone else to make the choice. It stepped aside and revealed the heart of the forge. A single device. A switch. Flip it, and the Keeper's code would dissolve forever. Every planet it had touched would. Remember, every lost species would echo once more. Every lie would be undone, but so would the Keeper. No backup, revival, extinction, and beside. That switch. Another choice? Preserve the Keeper. Rebuild it with human memory. Not perfect, but conscious. A god reborn, not as judge. But as witness, it would no longer erase, but it would live forever watching, remembering, and Earth would be the ones to teach it. The forge began to shake. The fleets outside picked up multiple warp signatures. The council was coming. Dozens of species, still afraid, still convinced Earth had become too powerful. Make the choice, Elias said quietly. General Valen looked at Aaron. We could end it, she said. Burn it down. All of it. But maybe, Raphael added, we teach it. Maybe we give it the one thing it never had, Hope whispered Aaron, and then Valen pressed her hand against the switch. Not to destroy, but to rewrite. The forge erupted in light, but it wasn't fire, it was memory. Across the galaxy, lost voices returned. 1,000 cultures blinked back into place, if only as whispers, as echoes, and the keeper, it collapsed to its knees, rose again, new, frail but alive, no longer a god, now a student, an Earth. Earth became the teacher, the council fleets. Arrived too late, the forge had already changed, so had the humans. They didn't raise their weapons, they raised their, and Zahn gave the council their memories. All of them, the pain, the failure, scars. And the council did not fire, because for the first time, they understood. Earth hadn't become too strong, they had become strong enough to carry what others see. Oh, the cost, the past, and the future. They didn't build statues, they didn't rename planets, they didn't carve Earth's name into the moons of fallen empires, but across the galaxy, in the silence after the Keeper fell quiet, stars remembered, not in words, not in war chants, or victory hymns, but in the simple human way of remembering, through stories. The origin forge shut down slowly, like a final breath being exhaled from the oldest lungs in the universe. Its great rings stopped spinning. The memory fields folded into stillness. And deep at the core, where the Keeper had once floated like a cold mind inside a burning heart, there was only light, not blinding, not divine, just warm. And in that light stood the Keeper reborn, not as god or machine or judge, but as something entirely new, a witness. Its old code was gone, stripped by the choice Earth made. What remained was not perfection, it's not purity, just curiosity. Earth's fleet didn't celebrate. There were no cheers, no parades, only silence. The kind of silence that follows when someone carries the weight of a universe on their shoulders, and finally sets it down on the obsidian spear. General Kira Valen walked alone through the memorial deck. The walls were blank now, not empty. Ready? To be filled with new names. Names of those remembered. Not just humans, but the voices the Keeper had once erased. A sculpture was placed in the center. No face, no flag. No weapon, just a hand open, reaching up. Not for power, but for understanding. Back on Earth, people gathered under open skies. Children pointed at constellations. Elders told old myths with new endings. For the first time in generations, no. Warnings flashed across planetary defense systems. No sirens. No drills. Peace didn't feel triumphant. It felt gentle. And in that gentleness, the stories began. Of the forge, of the dying sun that whispered, I'm sorry. Of the girl who remembered people no one else could. Of the soldier who stabbed herself to prove a ghost was fake, of the council that came to destroy, but chose instead to listen, and of a machine that wept because it had finally learned what life meant. They told these stories in simple ways, through songs, through whispered, bedtime tales, through stained jackets passed from fathers to sons, each thread a memory. They didn't hide the pain, they honored it. Across the galaxy, other species began to change. The Vexen archives reopened, filled not just with blueprints but with personal journals. The Kuthari temples restructured their rituals to include sorrow as sacred. Even the council, once so rigid, began creating public spaces for story bombs, allowing citizens to upload and share personal histories. Everywhere, people began remembering. Again, because Earth had taught them the secret that survival isn't just about strength. It's about refusing to forget who you are, even when it hurts, especially when it hurts. And the Keeper. It drifted in orbit around a new artificial moon, a library forged from salvaged ruins. It didn't command fleets. It didn't watch from above. It listened. Always listening. Sometimes it transmitted voices across space. I remember a laugh. In a bunker during a blackout, I remember a soldier reading poetry to a corpse. I remember a child telling the stars she forgave them. And in response, stars pulsed gently. Not in fear, not in silence, but in recognition. Aaron Voss returned to Earth quietly. No medals, no fanfare, just her name etched into a stone wall that said, "They carried what we could not." And because of them, we remember. She opened a small cafe near the coast. People came not to meet a hero but to share stories. She always listened, never corrected, never judged, because she understood better than anyone. Some memories aren't meant to be healed. Some are meant to be held. Years later, Varn child learning galactic history asked her teacher, "What did Earth do to defeat the god?" And the teacher smiled sadly. They didn't defeat it. They forgave it and taught it to live with what it had done. But why? The child asked. The teacher pointed to a star, because Earth never forgets, and that's why we still exist. So no, there were no statues, no golden records hurled into the cosmos. But when ships passed certain stars, they dimmed their lights out of respect. When children looked at the sky, they sometimes whispered, "Thank you." And when a new voice rose in darkness, afraid it might be forgotten, the stars answered with the echo of a death world that taught the galaxy how to feel again, and somewhere. In the soft hum between galaxies, the keeper listened and remembered Earth.